준비됐어요? 오케이. 가보자.
In K-pop, the 7th year isn't a milestone. It's more like a curse. Tomorrow Together had every industry-sanctioned reason to walk away. Burnout, health hiatuses, a terrifying, prolonged silence. Most groups separates after all of those, but TXT are still together. The origin of Tomorrow Together cannot be separated from the unprecedented shadow cast by their label, Big Hit Entertainment. By early 2019, the agency was the center of the global music industry, and the announcement of their first new boy group in 6 years generated immense, nearly unmanageable expectations. The 5 members, Soobin, yeonjun, beomgyu, taehyun, and hueningkai, stepped into a spotlight that demanded immediate perfection while carrying the label of little brothers to a legendary group. Their debut EP, The Dream Chapter, Star, saw them forging a distinct path away from their predecessors' hip-hop roots, leaning instead into synth-pop and adolescent vulnerability. They debuted with Crown, a track that used bright, effervescent production to mask the deep psychological growing pains of youth. The visual execution of Crown introduced a conceptual framework that would define their entire career trajectory. The music video utilized playful motion graphics and vibrant color palettes, but the core narrative centered on a boy growing horns out of his head and isolating himself out of shame. This was a direct metaphor for the painful, isolating experience of adolescence and the anxiety of being different in a conformity-driven society. This conceptual depth set them apart from standard rookie groups by proving they were building a narrative universe rather than just releasing singles. The impact was instant. Crown broke the record for the most viewed K-pop debut music video within 24 hours, and the group secured a historic Grand Slam by winning rookie awards at every major year-end ceremony.
진짜 받을 줄은 꿈에도 몰랐는데 받게 돼서 너무 영광인 것 같고
앞으로도 열심히 하라는 의미에서 주신 상이라고 생각하고 더 열심히 한 투모로우바이 투게더 되겠습니다.
감사합니다. 감사합니다.
But the brightness of their debut hid a deeper anxiety. In the track, Nap of a Star, they sang about the fear of being separated, a haunting admission that their brotherhood bond was a lifeline they were terrified to lose. For the 5 members, this success came with a heavy realization. They had successfully navigated the debut hurdle, but they now had to sustain an impossible standard, learning how to bear the weight of the crown that would inevitably grow heavier with every subsequent release. By the 31st of May 2021, the crown met its first major test. Global circumstances forced a sudden shift in their maturity as the COVID-19 pandemic stripped away the traditional idol-fan connection. This profound isolation deeply influenced their second studio album, The Chaos Chapter, Freeze. Working alongside RM and various international producers, the group pivoted sharply away from synth-pop style into straight-up, rock-infused emo pop. Love Song was a massive sonic departure, requiring the members to abandon the pristine vocal techniques of their rookie years in favor of strained emotional delivery. The recording process was reportedly grueling, demanding a level of vocal desperation that mirrored the bleak reality of teenagers trapped in a world that felt fundamentally broken. And the visual direction completely shattered their previously clean-cut image. The music video captures the members stealing a car and escaping down empty highways in distressed clothing. While the world also saw the success of Anti Romantic, the song served as a quiet, internal confession. It reflected a growing hesitance within the group, with a fear of getting too close to a dream that felt increasingly fragile. By 2021, they had seen how quickly the world could change, and the song's lyrics about protecting one's heart mirrored their own emotional distancing. They were becoming wary of the idol machinery, afraid that if they invested too much of their true selves into this perfect image, the eventual break would be total. They were singing about a fear of romance, but they were living a fear of the spotlight, bracing themselves for a crash they could already feel coming. On the 9th of May 2022, the theatrical angst of their work met the friction of physical reality. As global travel resumed, TXT released their fourth EP, Minnesota 2, Thursday's Child. Good Boy Gone Bad served as the aggressive, hardcore hip-hop title track, mirroring the internal frustration and exhaustion that was beginning to seep into the group's dynamic. Visually, the concept was entirely consumed by darkness, anger, and the messy aftermath of a shattered ideal. With a sharp, venomous delivery, a stark contrast to the melancholy of their previous work. And immediately embarked on their first extensive world tour, Act Lovesick, and made history as the first K-pop group to ever perform at Lollapalooza on the 30th of July 2022. The emotional weight of this era was the fear of inadequacy. Despite their rising fame, the members were plagued by intense imposter syndrome during this first US festival run. In the Disney Plus documentary, Our Lost Summer, Yeonjun questioned, "Did we deserve to be there?" while admitting he was worried they might ruin the vibe. Speaking to NME during this 2022 period, he confessed he felt lacking for such a huge stage. This internal pressure culminated in a breaking point. After the show, while the other members celebrated, soobin went back to his hotel room and cried.
저 롤라플루자 끝나고 호텔에서 엄청 울었었거든요. 그 멤버들이 가수 데뷔하고 나서 가장 행복한 하루였었대요. 4명이 다. 근데 저는 안 그러더라고요.
Behind-the-scenes footage from Act Lovesick captured moments of extreme physical exhaustion, members relying on oxygen masks backstage, and the brutal reality of maintaining a flawless facade through pain.
그건 저희는 쉴 틈이 없는.
괜찮았어요. 크게 아프진 않았고.
근데 조금 체력적으로 힘들긴 해요. 많이 힘들었죠.
빨리 갈게요.
Far harder than the debut had promised, they were pushing their limits to satisfy a global demand, setting the stage for an inevitable crash. The physical exhaustion of their first world tour seeped directly into the conceptual DNA of their next major project, manifesting as a literal descent. Their third studio album, the name chapter, Freefall, hit the shelves just as the group hit their limit. Chasing That Feeling was characterized by a heavy, driving synthwave beat that felt relentlessly propulsive, mirroring a treadmill they couldn't step off. The visual execution was a masterclass in representing psychological burnout, placing the members in a realistic urban environment to show them literally plummeting from the sky, crashing through asphalt, and stumbling through concrete sewers. On August 5th, they returned to Chicago, but this time as the first K-pop group to headline Lollapalooza. To the 100,000 audiences, they were unstoppable. This era was defined by a conscious shift toward vulnerability. During their headlining set, they performed Blue Spring, a song written as a collective letter to MOA, acknowledging the cold winter they endured to get to this stage. In the 2023 behind-the-scenes footage, the focus had shifted. They look like partners in a shared struggle, worrying more about the fans' safety rather than their own perfection. Despite the commercial triumph of Freefall debuting at number 3 on the Billboard 200, the album was an honest confession. They had climbed higher than they ever imagined, but the air was getting thin and the momentum was becoming unsustainable. We'll get to their ultimate decision in a moment, but first, we have to look at the terrifying year where the noise finally overwhelmed the machine. Following the conclusion of their 2023 schedules, the accumulated burnout materialized into a severe crisis that forced the group into an unprecedented pause. In late 2024, Big Hit Music announced that leader Soobin would be taking an indefinite health hiatus to recover from extreme physical and psychological exhaustion. Shortly thereafter, the entire group entered an uncharacteristic, prolonged period of silence. For the first time in their careers, the relentless forward momentum of Tomorrow Together completely stopped. With the 7-year contract renewal looming, the silence turned into deep anxiety. Separated from their shared schedule, the members had to ask the hardest question in the industry: was the cost of staying together actually worth it? It was a year of stillness. A raw confrontation with their own humanity where survival had to come before career. The industry speculated heavily on their future, watching to see if the weight of the crown had finally broken their necks. That terrifying silence broke in the summer of 2025, where TXT returned to the stage for their Act Tomorrow tour. But the atmosphere was uniquely tense, heavily weighted by the unspoken question of their impending contract expirations. On the night of August 22nd, towards the end of the concert, Soobin took the microphone and read a letter directly addressing the elephant in the room. He confirmed that despite the severe hardships of the previous year, all 5 members had officially renewed their contracts with Big Hit Music. They had looked at the exit, evaluated the physical and mental toll of the industry, and consciously chosen to stay together. The choice to announce it on MOA Day was an emotional masterstroke. The members aimed to solidify their promise to stay together with fans for a long time. The stadium erupted as they shifted from fear to profound relief, a public declaration that the bond of 2019 had survived the reality of 2024. The significance of this moment cannot be overstated within the context of their specific generation. As many of their peers fractured, lost members, or quietly disbanded under the pressure of the 7-year curse, TXT remained a singular, undivided unit. The members themselves visibly changed on stage, performing the rest of the setlist with a loosened, liberated energy, stepping out of the shadow of uncertainty, proving that their commitment to the group was stronger than the industry forces designed to tear them apart. Released on the 13th of April 2026, their 8th mini-album, 7th year, A Moment of Stillness in the Thorns, served as the physical receipt of that promise. The project abandoned the frantic anxiety of Freefall and the heavy angst of Thursday's Child for a sound that was mature and intensely calm. The 6-track record acts as an emotional ledger of their journey, opening with Bed of Thorns, a track that explicitly acknowledges the heavy consequences of their decision to stay in the industry. This newfound maturity anchors the album's lead single, Stick With You. I'll just stick with you. An electro-pop anthem driven by a vintage drumline and sharp techno-punk elements. The song conceptually centers on the desperation of holding onto a relationship on the verge of collapse for just one more day, operating as a direct parallel to the group's own internal battle to preserve their bond. Tracks like So What uses a mix of honesty and dark humor to dissect the accumulated anxieties of their career, while Take Me to Nirvana explores the profound psychological release that follows letting go of uncertainty. The album's 5th track, 21st Century Romance captures the atmosphere of their grayest days in late 2024, detailing the cold, concrete reality of burnout before they found the strength to start over. Finally, the fan-dedicated closer Dream of Mine, raw acoustic confession that documents the year of silence as a necessary exhale, staying for the oxygen they found in each other, and MOA. The visual rollout brilliantly reclaimed their debut imagery. Across concept films like Thorn, Hunger, Tension, and Anxiety, the members were placed in surreal thickets of razor-sharp vines. Compared to their rookie years, the Thorns had evolved from a symbol of pain into a protective fortress, demonstrating that the crisis of 2024 hadn't destroyed them, but had instead refined them into the most self-assured version of Tomorrow Together. The release of this album hit the fandom differently than any prior comeback. But the survival of Tomorrow Together wasn't solely decided behind closed doors in a corporate boardroom. The narrative of their 7 years is permanently intertwined with the resilience of their fandom, MOA. In an industry defined by rapid consumer consumption and fleeting attention spans, a fandom choosing to wait through a year of terrifying silence is a statistical anomaly. When the group hit their lowest point in 2024, the fans didn't migrate to newer, active groups. They maintained a protective perimeter around the members. The "we're staying" thesis from the group itself applied equally to the fans standing on the floor of the arenas, supporting them through Thorns and Thunders. This parallel journey is what elevates the TXT story from a standard pop biography to a genuine cultural phenomenon. The fans who were teenagers during the Dream chapter grew into adulthood alongside the members, sharing the same anxieties, burnouts, and recoveries. The contract renewal in 2025 was actually a mutual agreement. The members chose each other, and in doing so, they validated the years of emotional investment from the fans. They proved that growing up and facing the harsh realities of the world doesn't necessitate abandoning the people you started the journey with.
You can be my ghost girl. You can take my hand. 일어나! 다들 앉아 있을 거예요.
Tomorrow Together is no longer defined by the pressure of who came before them. They are defined by the sheer grit required to remain standing beside each other. The 7-year mark in K-pop is designed to be a finish line, a point where the machine exhausts its parts and moves on to the next. By surviving the burnout, enduring the silence, and actively choosing to walk back into the fire, Soobin, yeonjun, beomgyu, taehyun, and hueningkai broke the mechanics of that system. The comeback, A Moment of Stillness in the Thorns, is a monument to endurance, and the contract renewal was a promise between 5 artists and millions who waited for them. Through Thorns and Thunders, we are still together.